I'm Stephanie Collins, 34, and after 8 dedicated years at Apex Media, I'd watched my passion for creative marketing slowly die. The moment is crystal clear. James Mitchell's dismissive laugh when I handed him my resignation letter. "You'll be back. Nobody leaves Apex," he said with that smug smile I'd grown to detest. Little did he know, I'd spent weeks crafting a resignation letter that would change everything. Not just for me, but for the entire company. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Hit that subscribe button and like this video if you've ever fantasized about the perfect workplace exit. My story might just give you the courage to make your own bold move. My journey at Apex Media began with such promise. I joined as a junior marketing specialist fresh out of grad school, brimming with ideas and ambition. Apex was the dream, a cutting-edge marketing firm with blue-chip clients and a reputation for innovation. I still remember the butterflies in my stomach walking into that sleek downtown office for my first day, portfolio clutched to my chest, designer suit carefully selected the night before. James Mitchell, the CEO, had built Apex from nothing. A self-made success story, he never let anyone forget it. During my interview, he'd seemed charismatic and visionary. "We reward excellence here," he'd said, fixing me with those penetrating blue eyes. "Prove yourself and the sky's the limit." I believed him completely. The company culture was intense from day one. 12-hour days were standard. Weekend work was expected, not requested. But there was an energy that made it exciting. The thrill of landing major clients, the adrenaline of pitch meetings, the celebration drinks after successful campaigns. We worked hard, but there was camaraderie in the trenches. Alicia Davis joined 6 months after me. We bonded immediately over our shared background in digital marketing and mutual love of true crime podcasts. She became my closest ally. The person I could vent to over hurried lunches or late-night text messages when projects went sideways. "This place is a cult," she'd joke, but neither of us took it seriously then. Mason Harper was the senior VP who took me under his wing those first few years. He recognized my talent for connecting with clients and my eye for visual storytelling. Under his mentorship, the digital transformation strategy for legacy finance that James himself presented to the client as revolutionary, without mentioning I'd been the architect behind it. But something shifted around year 5. The company expanded rapidly, absorbing smaller agencies. The intimate creative environment gave way to corporate hierarchies and endless approval chains. My innovative ideas began meeting resistance from new middle managers who hadn't been part of building Apex's reputation. Mason grew distant, increasingly concerned with pleasing James rather than mentoring the team. He stopped defending my projects in executive meetings. Eventually, he stopped meeting with me altogether, canceling our monthly check-ins with vague excuses about scheduling conflicts. Then came Tara Rodriguez, 29, ambitious, and hired directly by James despite our standard team interview process. She was placed on my team but frequently bypassed me, presenting concepts directly to upper management. I'd find out about meetings after they happened, decisions made without my input. Meanwhile, my personal life was unraveling. My fiancé Ryan, tired of canceled dates and working vacations, returned the ring after 3 years of planning a wedding we never seemed to have time for. "You're married to Apex," he said the night he left. "There's no room for me." My sister Catherine's calls went to voicemail. I missed my nephew's birthday party because of an emergency client situation that, in retrospect, could have waited. Someone who jumped when her phone pinged after hours, who apologized excessively for having basic needs, who measured her worth by billable hours and client retention rates. I was disappearing, and nobody at Apex seemed to notice or care. The North Star Telecom presentation was supposed to be my redemption. After months of being sidelined, I'd been assigned lead on this major pitch, a potential $4 million account that would cement Apex's position in the telecommunications sector. For 6 weeks, I poured everything into crafting the perfect campaign. I conducted extensive market research, interviewed former telecom executives, and developed an innovative cross-platform strategy that addressed the client-specific challenges. My team and I worked around the clock. I arrived 2 hours early to set up the conference room, arranging printed presentations at each seat, testing the slideshow transitions repeatedly. Everything needed to be flawless. 30 minutes before the clients were due, James strolled in with Mason and Tara. I hadn't expected Tara to attend. She wasn't part of the project team. Change of plans, James announced, handing me a USB drive. We're using these slides instead. I opened the file on my laptop and froze. This wasn't my presentation. Yes, pieces of my work remained. But this isn't what we developed, I protested, trying to keep my voice level. The original strategy addresses their specific market challenges much more effectively. James waved dismissively. I've known Charles Northstar for 15 years, James said coldly. I think I understand what he wants better than your research. Before I could respond, the receptionist announced the client's arrival. James straightened his tie and added, "Oh, and I'll be leading the presentation. You'll handle the Q&A portion." I sat numbly as James presented my team's work as his own brainchild, occasionally acknowledging the team's contributions with a vague gesture in my direction. When Northstar's CMO asked about metrics for measuring community engagement, a key component of my original strategy, James fumbled, then deflected. Stephanie will address that in the Q&A. I salvaged what I could, explaining the sophisticated analytics dashboard we'd developed, the one element of my original work that had survived the revision. The client perked up, asking follow-up questions that I answered with detailed expertise. After the meeting, I expected at least acknowledgement of how I'd rescued that segment. Instead, James criticized me for overcomplicating the explanation. Next time, stick to the script, he snapped before heading to lunch with Mason and the executive team. I wasn't invited. 2 weeks later, we landed the account. The company-wide email from James praised the executive team's innovative approach and specifically mentioned Tara's fresh perspective that had apparently impressed the client. My name appeared nowhere. That same afternoon, the quarterly promotions were announced. Despite my department exceeding all targets, despite my seniority and client success record, I was passed over. Tara Rodriguez was promoted to senior director, a position above mine. After less than a year at the company, Alicia found me in the supply closet, where I'd retreated to hide my tears. "This is garbage," she whispered fiercely. "Everyone knows you're the backbone of this place." "Apparently not everyone," I replied, wiping my eyes with a rough paper towel. The following week brought a cascade of indignities. I caught a brutal flu but still managed a client deliverable by working from my sickbed. When I requested a mental health day to recover, James responded with a terse email. "We all get tired, Stephanie. Push through like everyone else." During a rare coffee break with Alicia in the office kitchen, resume prestige, fear. That night, working late again, I accidentally accessed a salary spreadsheet while looking for client files on the shared drive. Tara's new promotion came with a salary nearly double mine. I closed the file feeling physically ill. 8 years of loyalty, of sacrificed weekends and relationships, of proven results, and this was my value to Apex? That weekend, for the first time in years, I didn't open my laptop. Instead, I sat in my apartment surrounded by the evidence of my unbalanced life. Stacked takeout containers, dusty exercise equipment, framed photos of friends I hadn't seen in months, a dead plant on the windowsill that I'd forgotten to water. Sunday morning, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and stopped short. Dark circles shadowed my eyes. My complexion was sallow, my expression pinched with permanent stress. I looked not just exhausted but diminished, like a faded photograph of the woman I used to be. I didn't recognize myself anymore. And in that moment of clarity, I knew something had to change. The decision to quit didn't come as a thunderbolt, but as a quiet certainty that grew stronger with each passing day. Once I acknowledged the possibility, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope. First, I needed to understand my financial situation. That Sunday afternoon, I created a detailed spreadsheet of my savings, expenses, and financial obligations. Despite the salary inequity, I'd always been careful with money. I had enough savings to support myself for 6 months without income, 8 if I cut back on non-essentials. The lease on my apartment had 4 months remaining, which aligned well with the transition period. Next came research. I reached out to former Apex colleagues who had moved on successfully. Coffee with Thomas, now creative director at a respected agency. Lunch with Jennifer, who had started her own boutique consultancy, a phone call with David, who had left the industry entirely for a corporate marketing role with better work-life balance. Their stories were eye-opening. Not one regretted leaving. Best decision I ever made. She helped me identify my transferable skills and strengths beyond what Apex had conditioned me to value. Your problem-solving abilities, client relationship management. Several mentioned they'd wondered why I stayed at Apex given the company's deteriorating reputation. One evening, I called my sister Catherine. The fact that she assumed I was calling with an emergency said everything about how rare our conversations had become. "I'm thinking about leaving Apex," I said without preamble. The line went quiet for a moment. "Thank God," she finally replied. "That place has been killing you for years." Catherine had made a similar career change 5 years earlier, leaving corporate law for a smaller practice with family-friendly policies. She understood the fear and the freedom that came with such decisions. "The hardest part is making the decision," she assured me. "Everything after that is just logistics." We talked for hours that night, the longest conversation we'd had in years. She helped me strategize, offered to review my updated resume, and most importantly, reminded me of who I was before Apex had reshaped my identity around productivity and sacrifice. 3 weeks into my quiet job search, I received an email from Lucas Bennett. The interview process at Horizon was refreshingly different. 4 conversations with various team members, all focused on creative philosophy, leadership style, and work-life integration. I sought advice from my small circle of trusted confidants. All encouraged me to accept. "This is what you deserve," Alicia said firmly when I shared the news over a rare after-work drink. "Take it and run." With the Horizon offer secured, I turned my attention to crafting my resignation letter. This wouldn't be a standard 2 weeks notice. For 8 years, I had documented everything: the unpaid overtime, the credit taken for my work, the discriminatory patterns, the ethical corners cut. My detailed records filled a password-protected folder on my personal laptop. Each night after work, I refined the letter, striking a tone that was professional yet unflinching. I included specific dates, quotes, and documented incidents. I consulted with an employment attorney to ensure my claims were legally sound without crossing into defamation. The final version was 7 pages, comprehensive, meticulously sourced, and devastating in its accumulated evidence. It wasn't just my resignation, it was a reckoning. I chose a Tuesday for my resignation specifically, the morning after James would return from a client golf retreat in high spirits. I selected my outfit carefully. The same designer suit I'd worn on my first day at Apex, a small symbolic detail for my own satisfaction. The night before, I slept peacefully for the first time in months, my decision made. My path forward clear. Tuesday morning arrived with unusual clarity. I woke before my alarm, feeling strangely calm. The resignation letter was printed and tucked into a crisp manila envelope. My name and James's typed neatly on the front. Official, undeniable. I arrived at the office early, before the usual crowd. The quiet allowed me to center myself, reviewing mental notes for the conversation ahead. I'd rehearsed this moment countless times, anticipating James's potential reactions and my responses. At precisely 9:15, when James typically finished his morning coffee and email review, I knocked on his office door. The glass walls afforded no privacy, a design choice James had once described as promoting transparency, but used primarily for surveillance. "Come in," he called, not looking up from his computer. I entered and sat in the visitor chair across from his imposing desk without waiting for an invitation. This small assertion of confidence caught his attention. "Stephanie," he said, leaning back, "if this is about the Collins project timeline, I've already told Mason we can't extend it." "It's not about Collins," I replied, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I placed the envelope on his desk, sliding it toward him with one finger. "I'm resigning from Apex Media, effective 2 weeks from today." James stared at the envelope, then at me, his expression cycling through confusion to disbelief. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a short, dismissive sound that echoed in the glass office. "Resigning? Come on, Stephanie." He pushed the envelope aside without opening it. "What's this really about? The North Star presentation?" Or is this about Tara's promotion? Neither, I said. I've accepted a position elsewhere. His eyebrows rose. Where? I don't think that's relevant to my resignation. His laugh returned louder this time, attracting glances from employees walking past his office. So dramatic. Look, everyone gets frustrated. It's a demanding business. But you don't throw away 8 years over temporary disappointments. I remained silent, maintaining eye contact. You know how many people would kill for your position? He continued, his tone becoming condescending. We've invested in you, Stephanie. Trained you. Given you opportunities when you were nobody. Through the glass walls, I noticed Alicia watching from her desk, concern evident on her face. Mason had paused in the hallway, pretending to check his phone while eavesdropping. The team relies on you, James continued, shifting to manipulation. Walking out now during peak season? That's abandoning people who depend on you. Is that really the reputation you want? When I didn't respond to the guilt trip, his strategy changed again. Look, I get it. You feel undervalued. Everyone does sometimes. He leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. Tell you what, we can discuss a retention bonus. 5,000. Would that address your concerns? The insulting offer nearly broke my composure. $5,000 for 8 years of exploitation? After discovering male colleagues with less experience were making tens of thousands more? My resignation isn't a negotiation tactic. I stated firmly. James leaned back in his chair, still smiling but with visible irritation creeping into his expression. Fine. Play hardball. 10,000. And we forget this conversation happened. When I didn't reply, his confidence visibly wavered. Then, recovering, he laughed again and tossed my envelope dismissively to the side of his desk. You'll be back, he said with absolute certainty. Nobody leaves Apex. Not permanently. 3 months at whatever second-rate shop has poached you, and you'll be begging for your job back. He smirked. And we might even keep a position open for you. Something entry-level, of course. You'll need to earn your way back up. The condescension in his voice hung in the air between us. Through the glass walls, I could see several colleagues had stopped pretending not to watch. Tara had joined Mason in the hallway, their expressions a mix of curiosity and discomfort. I took a slow, deliberate breath, then asked the question that would change everything. Have you actually read my resignation letter, James? James glanced at the envelope with irritation, as if its mere existence was an inconvenience. What's to read? Thank you for the opportunity, moving on to explore new challenges. The usual platitudes. He waved his hand dismissively. I've seen hundreds of resignation letters. They all say the same thing. Not this one, I replied quietly. I think you should read it. Now. Something in my tone gave him pause. With exaggerated impatience, he snatched up the envelope, tore it open, and pulled out the document inside. His eyes widened slightly at the thickness. 7 pages, not the standard single sheet. What is this, a novel? He joked, but his smile had lost its confidence. It's a comprehensive account of my experience at Apex Media, I answered. I believe you'll find it informative. James began to read, his expression still showing traces of amusement that quickly began to fade. I sat perfectly still, watching the transformation happen in real time. The letter began professionally enough. Dear Mr. Mitchell, please accept this letter as formal notification of my resignation from the position of Marketing Director at Apex Media, effective 2 weeks from today's date. Standard opening, but then it continued. My resignation is the result of systematic workplace issues that I've documented over the past 8 years, which I feel obligated to bring to your attention, and that of the company's leadership. James's eyes narrowed, but he continued reading as I outlined the first category of concerns. Workplace misconduct. I had documented specific instances with dates, times, and witnesses. March 15, 2022. Executive meeting where James told female presenters to smile more and dress for the clients we want. November 4, 2023. Holiday party where Senior VP Thomas Reeves made explicit comments about female employees' appearances after consuming alcohol, with no consequence despite multiple complaints to HR. August 28, 2024. Email thread where James referred to a female client as emotionally unstable for requesting campaign revisions that male clients routinely received without comment. James's jaw tightened as he turned to the next section, gender-based pay discrimination. Here, I had included actual salary figures obtained from the accidentally accessed compensation spreadsheet. 000 plus quarterly bonuses averaging $12,000, despite managing 4 fewer client accounts than my portfolio. Derek Wells, Marketing Director, Technology Division, receives $138. 000 plus stock options valued at approximately $30,000 annually, despite joining the company 3 years after me with no prior agency experience. Asterisk. The list continued, methodically detailing the pattern of pay inequity across departments. By now, the color had begun to drain from James's face. His eyes darted up to meet mine, then quickly returned to the document as he turned to the next page. Evidence of inappropriate communication. I had included screenshots of messages from the company's Slack and email systems. Executive team chat discussing which female job candidates were hot enough for client meetings. James's own email describing a pregnant employee's maternity leave request as inconvenient timing, and suggesting they find legitimate performance issues to deny her return. Messages from Mason to James questioning my emotional stability when I requested time off following my grandfather's death. James's breathing had become shallow, his knuckles white as he gripped the pages. The next section detailed labor violations. Asterisk as required by the Fair Labor Standards Act. I have maintained personal records of unpaid overtime hours, which total approximately 1,240 hours over the past 3 years alone. These hours were explicitly requested by management with statements such as, "This is what it takes to succeed here," and "If you want the promotion, show the commitment." Asterisk. I had included a detailed spreadsheet as an appendix, showing dates, projects, hours worked and management requests that had necessitated the unpaid time. The next section documented instances where my work and ideas had been presented as originating from others, particularly James himself. The Wellness Way campaign that won an industry award, credited to James Mitchell's innovative approach, in press releases despite being entirely my concept and execution. The digital transformation strategy for legacy finance that James presented to the client board, without acknowledging my role as its architect. 3 separate pitch decks where my name had been removed from presentation credits, after I had developed the core concepts and materials. James's face had transformed completely now, the smug smile replaced by a sickly pallor. He looked up at me, opened his mouth to speak, then seemed to think better of it and returned to the letter. The most damning section came next. Evidence of potential client billing fraud. During a late night at the office, I had discovered discrepancies between hours reported to clients and actual work performed. Asterisk review of internal time tracking systems versus client invoices reveals a pattern of billing discrepancies averaging 22% higher than services rendered. Specific examples include the Northstar Telecom account, where 340 hours were billed for the initial campaign development despite internal time records showing only 265 hours worked. Asterisk. James's hand trembled slightly as he turned to the final page. His eyes widened as he read the conclusion. Asterisk in accordance with my ethical obligations and the terms of my employment contract, I have submitted copies of this documentation to the Apex Media Board of Directors, GoldenTree Media's executive leadership, and their respective legal departments. I am available to discuss these matters further should clarification be required. Asterisk. Sincerely, Stephanie Collins. The letter slipped from James's fingers, pages scattering across his desk. The confident, condescending man who had laughed at my resignation minutes earlier had vanished. In his place sat someone cornered, calculating desperate options. "Stephanie," he began, his voice strained with forced calm. There's clearly been some misunderstanding. These are serious allegations that could damage reputations, yours included." I remained silent, letting the weight of the moment hang between us. "Let's discuss this reasonably," he continued, attempting to regain control. "Whatever concerns you have, We can address them internally. There's no need for the board or parent company to be involved. When I still didn't respond, panic began to seep into his voice. I've always supported your career, Stephanie. Always seen your potential. Perhaps we've had communication issues, but that's fixable. He leaned forward, desperation evident. The senior director position, it should have been yours. Still can be. With an appropriate compensation adjustment, of course. Outside the glass office, more colleagues had gathered, sensing something unprecedented was unfolding. Alicia had moved closer, her expression a mix of concern and pride. Mason looked positively ill. In fact, James continued, words tumbling out faster now, I've been considering creating a new position, Chief Creative Officer, reporting directly to me, full autonomy over your department, substantial equity package. I finally broke my silence. My resignation stands, James. 2 weeks' notice as stated. Name your price, he hissed, abandoning all pretense. Whatever they're offering you, I'll double it. I stood, smoothing my suit jacket with steady hands. This was never about money. As I turned to leave, he called after me. You can't do this. You've signed NDAs, confidentiality agreements. I paused at the door. Those don't cover workplace discrimination or illegal practices. As I'm sure the legal team will confirm shortly. As if on cue, James's phone began to ring. The display showed Marjorie Chun, Legal Department. He stared at it in horror, then back at me. 2 weeks, I repeated calmly, and walked out of his office with my head high. The moment I closed James's office door behind me, the atmosphere in the open workspace crackled with tension. Colleagues quickly averted their eyes, pretending to be absorbed in their monitors while stealing glances at James through the glass walls. His phone continued to ring as he stared at it like it might explode. I walked steadily back to my desk, conscious of being watched. My heart hammered in my chest, but outwardly I maintained the composure I'd practiced for this moment. I hadn't made it halfway across the floor when James's door flew open. Stephanie. His voice had lost all traces of its earlier condescension. Please, let's continue this conversation. I think we've had a significant misunderstanding. I turned to face him, aware we now had the undivided attention of the entire office. There's no misunderstanding, James. Everything in that letter is documented and verifiable. He approached me, lowering his voice to an urgent whisper. Whatever you want. Name it. Senior VP position. Compensation review. Corner office. More creative control. As I said, this isn't about negotiation. His face flushed with frustration and fear. Think about what you're doing. To yourself. To this company. To people who depend on us. I have thought about it. For months. I maintained steady eye contact. My decision is final. James's phone buzzed in his hand with a text message. He glanced down, and I watched his face pale further. The board has called an emergency meeting, he muttered, almost to himself. Then, making one last attempt, he said, We can fix this, Stephanie. Together. I'm willing to make significant changes. It's too late for that, I replied quietly. 8 years too late. Before he could respond, Marjorie Chun from legal appeared at his elbow. Her expression grave. James, we need to speak immediately. She nodded curtly to me. Miss Collins, the HR director, would like to meet with you at your earliest convenience. Of course, I replied. I'll head there now. As I walked away, I heard Marjorie murmuring urgently to James about serious allegations and potential liability. His response was too low to catch. But his body language, shoulders slumped, head bowed, spoke volumes. I returned to my desk to find Alicia waiting, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and admiration. What did you do? She whispered. James looks like he's seen a ghost. I told the truth, I said simply, gathering my personal tablet and notebook. Everything we've talked about for years. But this time with documentation. Alicia glanced toward James's office, where he and Marjorie were now engaged in intense conversation. The board is involved? I nodded. And GoldenTree's executive team. Holy shit, she breathed. You're my hero. I smiled for what felt like the first time in months. I'm just tired of being afraid. The meeting with HR was surprisingly brief. The director, Patricia Williams, maintained a neutral expression as she confirmed the details of my 2-week notice and explained the exit procedures. But I noticed she didn't try to convince me to stay or question my reasons, a significant departure from the company's usual retention tactics. "Your letter has been received by the appropriate parties," she said carefully. "There will likely be follow-up conversations regarding the concerns you've raised." "I'm available to provide any additional information required," I replied. When I returned to the marketing department, the energy had shifted dramatically. Word had clearly spread. Colleagues watched me with new expressions, some wary, others almost reverent. I began methodically organizing my desk, archiving important files, and creating transition documents for my projects. Mason approached awkwardly, hovering beside my desk. Once my mentor and advocate, he had become just another company man, protecting his own position at the expense of his team. "Stephanie, if there's anything I can do to help with your transition." "There isn't," I said simply. "But thank you for the offer." He retreated quickly, already distancing himself from what was clearly becoming a corporate earthquake. Throughout the afternoon, I received a steady stream of visitors. Some came to my desk openly. Others approached in the break room or sent meeting invitations for empty conference rooms. Melissa from accounting squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for saying what we've all been afraid to say." David from creative shared that he'd been documenting similar issues, but hadn't had the courage to come forward. Janet from client services slipped me a note. "You've given me hope that things can actually change." Even more telling were the emails and messages that began arriving from former employees who had already heard the news through the company grapevine. "Finally, wishing I'd had your courage when I left. Let me know if you need a witness. I have stories. Whatever you're doing next, I want to be part of it." By late afternoon, the situation had escalated further. Security personnel arrived and were stationed discreetly near the executive offices. The board meeting, conducted via video conference, had been ongoing for hours. I noticed Tara watching me from across the room, her expression unreadable. Eventually, she approached my desk, arms crossed defensively. "So that's why I got the promotion," she said without preamble. "Because I'm new and don't know enough to be dangerous." I shrugged. "Or because you're talented and deserved recognition. The problem isn't who gets promoted. It's the system that makes advancement a zero-sum game where only certain people are allowed to win." She considered this, frowning. "The Collins Group needs firm boundaries or they'll call at all hours." Tara looked surprised at my willingness to help. "Why would you tell me that? I haven't exactly been collegial." "Because the work matters to me. And because you didn't create this culture, you just inherited it like I did 8 years ago." She nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, your Wellness Way campaign was what made me want to work here. I had no idea it was yours until I found the original drafts in the archive." As the workday wound down, an email arrived from the board of directors requesting my presence at a meeting the following morning. I confirmed my attendance calmly, though my stomach fluttered with nervous energy. Just before 5 o'clock, a commotion near the executive suite drew everyone's attention. James emerged from his office, face ashen, escorted by 2 security personnel. He carried no box of belongings, had no opportunity for goodbyes, just a stunned, hollow expression as he was led to the elevator. The office fell completely silent as the doors closed behind him. Moments later, an email arrived from GoldenTree Media's CEO announcing James's immediate leave of absence pending an internal investigation, and naming an interim leadership team. The message included a brief acknowledgement of serious concerns raised about workplace culture, and a commitment to thorough review and appropriate action. As I gathered my things to leave, Alicia appeared at my side. "Drinks? I think you've earned it." I smiled, realizing I had no urgent projects demanding my evening for the first time in years. "Actually, yes. I'd like that." Walking out of the Apex offices that evening felt like emerging from underwater. Sounds sharper, colors brighter. The weight of constant pressure suddenly lifted. I had expected to feel anxiety or doubt after the confrontation, but instead found only a profound sense of peace. Whatever came next, I had finally reclaimed my voice, and with it myself. 3 months later, I stood in the bright, open-concept offices of Horizon Creative, watching my team collaborate on our newest campaign. The energy was palpable, ideas flowing freely, laughter punctuating serious discussions, genuine excitement about the work itself rather than fear of criticism. My office door, when I chose to close it, which was rarely, was made of frosted glass that provided privacy without isolation. On my desk sat a healthy plant, watered weekly, without fail, and a framed photo from my sister Catherine's recent birthday celebration. An event I'd not only attended but helped plan. The transition from Apex to Horizon hadn't been seamless. The first few weeks were disorienting, like stepping off a high-speed train onto solid ground. I kept bracing for urgent late-night emails that never came, flinching when my phone rang after hours, usually just friends, wondering if I was free for dinner. The absence of constant pressure created its own strange anxiety. "It's normal," Lucas Bennett, Horizon's founder, assured me during one of our weekly check-ins. "Your nervous system is recalibrating. Give it time." He was right. Gradually, I stopped automatically checking my email first thing upon waking. I rediscovered weekends, actual full days without work. I started sleeping through the night without stress-induced insomnia. Most surprisingly, I found myself becoming more productive and creative, not less. Without the drain of toxic stress, my mind had space to innovate again. My team's first campaign under my leadership had already exceeded client expectations, earning industry attention for its fresh approach. The aftermath at Apex had been seismic. James Mitchell never returned from his leave of absence. The internal investigation triggered by my resignation letter expanded as more employees came forward with similar experiences. Eventually, GoldenTree Media issued a public statement announcing a complete restructuring of Apex's leadership and comprehensive review of its workplace policies. Mason Harper resigned 2 weeks after the investigation began. Tara Rodriguez surprisingly stayed and emerged as an advocate for cultural change, using her position to push for transparency in promotion criteria and compensation structures. Former colleagues reached out regularly, seeking advice on everything from portfolio development to negotiation tactics. Many had found the courage to demand better treatment or explore new opportunities. Others asked about openings at Horizon, drawn to rumors of its supportive environment. Alicia had become my first official hire, joining Horizon as Associate Creative Director. "Best decision I've made since convincing you to finally quit," she joked during her first week, already looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in years. The most unexpected reconnection came from Ryan, my ex-fiancé. A casual coffee to catch up turned into dinner, then regular conversations as we cautiously rebuilt our friendship. The woman he'd fallen in love with, passionate, creative, present, was gradually re-emerging from beneath years of corporate conditioning. "I'm not making any promises," I told him during a long walk through the park one weekend. "I'm still figuring out who I am without Apex defining me." "No pressure," he replied with the patient smile I'd once taken for granted. "I'm just happy to see you happy again." I'd resumed photography, a passion abandoned years ago when it didn't contribute to career advancement. Every Sunday morning found me exploring the city with my camera, capturing moments and perspectives purely for the joy of creative expression. Some of these photographs now hung in Horizon's common areas, a small but meaningful integration of my personal creativity into my professional space. Catherine and I had dinner together monthly, a sacred commitment neither of us broke. During our most recent meeting, she raised her glass in a toast to my sister, who finally learned that setting yourself on fire to keep others warm is a terrible career strategy. I laughed. To boundaries and self-respect, better late than never. Her expression turned serious. "I was worried about you, Steph, for years. It was like watching you disappear a little more each time I saw you." "I know," I admitted. "I couldn't see it then. Or maybe I didn't want to." "What finally changed?" I considered the question carefully. I think I finally understood that respect can't be earned by enduring mistreatment. That no job is worth losing yourself for. The legal aftermath of my resignation continued to unfold. I had provided additional documentation to investigators and given a formal statement to GoldenTree's legal team. The company had implemented sweeping changes to address the issues raised. From pay equity reviews to new reporting structures for workplace concerns. There were rumors of potential class action suits from former employees, though I had declined to participate. My goal had never been financial compensation or revenge, only recognition of the truth and prevention of similar experiences for others. The most profound change wasn't in my career trajectory or work environment, but in my relationship with my own worth. I no longer measured my value by billable hours or client retention rates. Success had become more holistically defined by the mentorship I provided to my team, by the integrity of our work, by my ability to be fully present in both my professional and personal life. I still worked hard and cared deeply about delivering excellence, but not at the expense of my well-being or values. The difference was permission to have boundaries, to prioritize health, to acknowledge that sustainable success requires wholeness rather than sacrifice. My phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Board loved the Carlton presentation. Celebration drinks at 5? I replied with a thumbs up, smiling at the contrast with my former workplace where achievements were expected rather than celebrated. As I looked out over the creative space, watching my team collaborate with energy and purpose, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The resignation letter that had seemed so terrifying to deliver now felt like the first step toward reclaiming my authentic voice. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply tell the truth, not as a weapon, but as an act of self-respect that creates ripples far beyond our individual experience. Standing up hadn't just changed my circumstances, it had transformed my understanding of courage itself. Courage wasn't fearlessness or grand gestures, but the quiet decision to honor your worth when every external force suggests you should compromise it. Every person deserves work that values their humanity alongside their productivity. Every professional deserves success that doesn't require the sacrifice of their well-being. These truths seem obvious now, but they had taken me 8 years and one carefully crafted letter to fully embrace. The journey of healing continues daily, learning to trust again, to believe in my inherent value beyond achievement, to maintain healthy boundaries without apology. Some days are easier than others, but even the difficult moments carry a new sense of agency and clarity. If you're watching this and recognizing your own workplace in my story at Apex, please know you're not alone. Your worth isn't determined by your willingness to endure toxicity. Your talent doesn't need validation through sacrifice. Sometimes the bravest career move is simply walking away from what diminishes you, toward what allows you to flourish. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to prioritize your well-being over a toxic situation? What helped you find the courage to make that change? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories of workplace transformation and authentic success. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, the most powerful career strategy is honoring your worth, consistently and unapologetically.